Welcome, everybody, to the House of Hustle podcast on Sports Radio 810. We are presented, as always, by our friends at Charlie Hustle, where vintage shirts are made fresh. My name is Jarrett Sutton. I am joined by my co-host, Stephen St. John, repping his KC Kings gear. Perfect time for some basketball chatters. We get ready for Conference Championship Week. We're not going to talk about NBA and KC on this pod, but maybe in another pod. But it's time to get to some Big 12, some SEC, all the conference tournaments getting started. I'm out in Vegas for the WCC Championship tonight. It's a fun time just with everything going on with the NCAA tournament looming, Selection Sunday, just a few days away, but still so much to be decided. Steven, it's a blast. This is one of my favorite times of the year.
It is, and March Madness is here, but we have several topics to talk about, so we'll go ahead and get after the first one. The SEC released their postseason awards, and they have co-coach of the year between Buzz Williams and Jerry Stackhouse. I asked Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News today on my show, and he said he would have Dennis Gates ahead of both of them. I can understand the Buzz Williams half of that, but Jerry Stackhouse ahead of Dennis Gates, no way. USA Today named SEC Coach of the Year Dennis Gates. And so what's your reaction to there being SEC co-coaches of the year and neither one of them is Dennis Gates?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Buzz Williams is deserving. A&M's had a great year. They just beat Alabama. It was a big win for them. And, they've really, a team that's kind of come out of nowhere to be in the top four here in the SEC and, finish second in the league. So Buzz is deserving. No slight to Jerry Stackhouse. He's had a good year, but it's not anything to what Dennis Gates has done in his first year as a head coach. And look, the coaches voted on these awards. I find it very, ironic that last year when Cuonzo Martin was going through some struggles, I think every coach in their post-game press conference would, rave about Cuonzo Martin. And I don't know, you haven't really gotten a lot of that from coaches about Dennis Gates. I think Dennis Gates is new and is learning all the coaches, learning the lay of the land of the league. And so the fact Jerry gets it over Dennis is a little bit shocking to me, but it's also, one of those things where I still don't understand how D'Moy Hodge isn't on a, all SEC defensive team. That's another topic of conversation. I think it's got a lot to do with, I think Mizzou's got some bulletin board motivation going into the SEC tournament, to say the least. I don't think Dennis Gates is going to, blink an eye on not getting coach of the year, but I do think he was the coach of the year. And I think everybody knew it. I think it was such a surprise to see Jerry Stackhouse ahead of him, just because of the year Mizzou's had. What they had, 8 quad 1 losses, so no real bad loss, on their resume. I know the net rating comes into play, but Dennis Gates was my coach of the year in the SEC for sure. And I think he needs more national love too, to be quite honest. I think with everything going on with Jerome Tang and Shaka Smart's so deserving as well. And obviously Buzz Williams definitely is in the conversation as well with national coach of the year, but Dennis Gates needs some more respect to the name, in my opinion.
All right, let's get into the SEC tournament. The first round, the 12-13 matchup and the 11-14 matchup. South Carolina, Ole Miss, Georgia, LSU. Is there anything that's interesting about either of these two matchups?
Not really. I mean, I think the one interesting, part of these matchups, you would think Georgia could probably get out of their first round game. For South Carolina, I'd love to see Gigi Jackson, that talented freshman, a couple more times if possible. So if they could get off and win their first round SEC tournament game, that'd be great. These bottom four teams, they are in the bottom four for a reason. You look at the job Mike White's done at Georgia, 6-12, a team that we didn't know a ton about going into it in terms of his roster. South Carolina, though, with Gigi, that was a big get for them. So for them to be in the bottom four, LSU, first-year head coach, they got a lot of talent and athleticism. So these bottom four teams, I think going into the year, especially with Ole Miss, you thought they might be in this conversation. I thought that South Carolina and LSU might be a little bit better, but not a lot to go off of in these matchups. It's the first round, opening round for a reason. But this is much different than, talking about the Big 12 when there's 4 teams, where I think those those 2 games are going to be like NCAA tournament games. These games, we'll see who's checked in and who's checked out. I think that's what it comes down to with Georgia, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and LSU playing in that opening weekend or on that opening night coming up here on Wednesday.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump to the next day, which should have a couple of intriguing matchups. The 8-9 game is Florida and Mississippi State. Then we get interested because this will provide us the potential matchup for the Missouri Tigers, the 4 seed. It'll be the 5 seed Tennessee, and they will take on the winner of South Carolina and Ole Miss. We anticipate that would be Tennessee. So let's look forward to a possible Tennessee-Mizzou matchup. Mizzou won with a buzzer beater at Tennessee, and now Tennessee doesn't have their point guard. And so they're a damaged team. This looks, I mean, you're going to have a tough game on Friday, no matter who you play. But give me the team that's missing their point guard with the way Mizzou plays and pressures the basketball. It won't be easy, but that's a pretty decent matchup if that ends up being the 4-5 game on Friday for Mizzou. What do you think about that potential matchup for Mizzou in their first game in the SEC tournament?
Yeah, it's a tough matchup. That's all, it's expecting Tennessee survives. Now, Tennessee's had some games where they've really struggled on offense, but, Tennessee's saw them play against Arkansas at home. They beat Arkansas, and the Auburn game, was really a fun college basketball game, and I thought Tennessee played really well in that game. Zakai Ziegler is out with the ACL. That was a big loss for Tennessee, their starting point guard. He makes so many things happen for this team. But you look at where they're at. They're coming off a tough loss against Auburn where they score 70, though. And I thought they played, fairly well. They were in that game for much of that game, and it was at Auburn. There was a lot riding on that game for Auburn, particularly. But you look at, right now I think where Tennessee's at, you lose your point guard. That's a huge loss, but Santiago Vescovi is one of the better players in the league. He had 21 against Auburn, and he's a guy that's kind of going to have to carry the load. Josiah James, Julian Phillips is back and healthy. Julian Phillips actually got injured in the Mizzou game, and he was out for quite a while. But this Tennessee team's got a lot of size. That's the only thing for Mizzou that I worry about is the rebounding, the size on the interior. It's got to be a big game for Kobe Brown. He's got to play well. Mohamed Diarra, probably a big game for him as well in terms of being a factor with his size on the glass and around the rim. Mizzou's got a lot of better play out of Noah Carter. I would say over the last 2-3 games, Noah's played better. I think Noah kind of played more like towards the beginning of the year, what we've seen from him the last few games, where he's playing with a lot more confidence. Obviously, Demoy Hodge is the factor, and Sean East as well in terms of creating havoc, forcing turnovers. That's something that's going to be a big part in this game, just because Vescovi is their lead guard. He does not want to be the lead guard. He wants to be off the ball. He's got to play the point. He's capable of playing the point. He is a good passer, but he obviously he's not to the level Zakai Ziegler was. So it's a good game, a good matchup. I think it's a great game in terms of just the matchup you want to see. For if you're an SEC basketball fan and you don't have a dog in the fight, Missouri, Tennessee is going to be a fun one because it's all going to be about who creates the pace, who creates tempo, what style of play is going to be played in this game. Tennessee is going to want to throw the ball inside and make it a game around the paint and make it a game on the interior, make it a possession by possession game, and try to slow down Missouri and keep them from that magic number 70, which is where Missouri, usually wins games when they're scoring 70 or over. And Tennessee is going to try to lock you down defensively. But great matchup and a game that I think Tennessee is going to think, man, we gave up this game. We didn't finish in the top 4. We didn't get a double bye because DeAndre Golston hit a buzzer beater in our building. So let's see how these two teams match up in the SEC tournament. It's going to be fun.
Okay, one really good matchup that we know we're going to have. We'll jump back to Thursday as we go to the bottom half of the bracket. The 7-10 matchup, I think is really, really good between Auburn and Arkansas. And that should be a pretty desperate game, very talented. I mean, that doesn't seem like a 7-10 matchup on paper, does it? What do you think?
It does not.
What do you think of that matchup?
Yeah, I think when you look at the matchup, Auburn, I mean, they're playing with their hair on fire right now. They went to Alabama, lost a really tough game in double overtime. Game I I think they gave away too many times. And I know Bruce Pearl was very unhappy with the officiating in that game. I think there were other reasons why his team lost that game outside of the officiating, but it was a hell of a basketball game. First off, where Alabama came all the way back and back down to the wire finish. Then Auburn has to win a game at home against Tennessee, and they're able to get that done. That was a back and forth game. I look at this matchup too for Arkansas. It's been a tough road for Eric Musselman's team, just with everything going on with the injuries. No Trevon Brazile, Nick Smith missing majority of the year. They're a team that's led by Anthony Black and Ricky Council, Jordan Walsh off the bench, the Mitchell brothers. I think this is an Arkansas team that's got to do a lot in this tournament. They got to win some games. I still think they're a team that when you look at them still fighting for that NCAA tournament, they got to make some noise in this tournament. And so they got to win this game. I think Auburn is in the same boat. So this would feel more like that game of two teams really riding on needing a win to really try to help themselves in terms of tournament resume, all those things of trying to get in and getting in the proper seed line they want to get into. You do not want to drop a game like this and just be – you don't want to be on Selection Sunday, holding your breath and crossing your fingers that you're going to get in the dance. So it's a fun matchup, and matchups like this are what make the conference tournament so intriguing. It's not necessarily the 1 and 2 and 3 seeds. It's that middle of the pack teams that are trying to get in.
All right, the other game that takes place going back to Wednesday is Georgia and LSU, the 11 and 14, and the winner of that game will advance to take on Vanderbilt. And then potentially, if Vanderbilt can get by there, they'll have a rematch against Kentucky of that late season, very important road win that they had against Kentucky on senior night. So the potential matchups, if everything holds on Friday, we could end up watching the winner of Mississippi State and Florida, which is who's going to be the winner of that 8-9 game. I like Mississippi State.
I'd give it to Mississippi State. Yeah, I'm going to give them the edge, especially with Tolu Smith playing well. Florida a little bit too up and down for me. They've had some good wins. They've also had some games where they've really, I think, looked to really struggle in terms of just depending so much on Colin Castleton. They've been a little bit too up and down. 500 team. I'll give the edge to Mississippi State in this game. But I will say, in terms of roster, when Florida plays to the caliber they're capable of, and Coach Golden said this before, like, yes, Castleton is kind of their best player. He's had some huge games, over the year, but their guard play is actually really good when it's good. I mean, when they're humming. Will Richard has played better. Reeves has played better. Lofton has had some good moments. But it comes down to guard play, and that's where I give Mississippi State the edge in this game. I think they're just more tougher, too, in terms of their guards and the size with Tolu. I like Mississippi State in this game. Great defensive team, too.
So Mississippi State or Florida against Alabama. We like Mississippi State. The potential Tennessee against Mizzou game. Arkansas against Auburn. The winner will take on A&M. And then probably Vanderbilt against Kentucky. That will be the games on Friday, and then who knows what happens there. So tell me your pick to win the SEC tournament, and then tell me a dark horse who you think could get hot at the right time and maybe surprise if you were going to have more of a long shot to win the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama is still the team to beat. I think they're the team that should win the SEC tournament. I would not slouch Texas A&M. We just saw A&M beat Alabama. I think A&M has every chance to win this tournament. So I would put Alabama at 1A, and then A&M at like 1B, 1C, I guess, if you will. I think those are the teams to beat. Tennessee, when they're playing to the caliber that they were playing at the beginning of the year, are very good. Now, obviously, they don't have their point guard, so it's hard to put them in this conversation. I think Missouri should take care of business against Tennessee if they play to the level they're capable of playing at, which we've seen Missouri have, these great halves like we saw against Georgia and LSU, where they put together a second half where you're like, man, that's just put the foot on the gas and they run away with it. And then you think, well, their first half was just as bad as much as their second half was good. So if they can put 40 minutes together, Missouri has a legitimate chance. I would say dark horse to pull like some upsets maybe and get Auburn. I wouldn't overlook Auburn just because they're playing with a fight and a tenacity to them. That was fun to see in the Alabama game. They're playing with a ton of motivation and a ton of that urgency that I think that's a big word right around this time of the year. And usually the teams that play with it, like there's no tomorrow and the urgency level is so high and the intensity level is so high, they can pull off some wins. So I'd put them in this. I'd put Vanderbilt, but with Liam Robbins being banged up, he's the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if they can get by in terms of just they're a good team, and they've been impressive in league play for much of the year, even dating back when the league play started in January. They had some really competitive games, even games they lost. They were so competitive. So I wouldn't overlook them. I just think Robbins is such a big piece to that team, and when not healthy, that's a huge blow to their team.
I think if Arkansas gets past Auburn, they'll beat A&M and get hot. So we'll see what happens.
It's a good sleeper.
That's going to be interesting to see. All right, let's transition to the Big 12 tournament that starts on Wednesday in Kansas City. And like you said, these Wednesday games are not throwaways. All of these teams legitimately can tell themselves, hey, if we get hot and win a couple of games in Kansas City, we could be going to the NCAA tournament. West Virginia might already be in the tournament, but it would help them to win on Wednesday night. And so we have the 8-9 matchup, West Virginia and Texas Tech, and then the 7-10 matchup is Bedlam between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Texas Tech suspends their head coach, and so there is some turmoil going on with that program. I expect West Virginia to win that game and then provide us with a really interesting matchup against Kansas on Thursday. But what do you say? West Virginia and Texas Tech, their A game could beat a lot of teams in the country. Who do you think wins that 8-9 matchup on Wednesday?
Yeah, I got West Virginia as well. I've been impressed with just how they played. They haven't been great away from home. They're on a 2-game winning streak, so they've won a couple to close the regular season portion of the conference slate. 7-11 in Big 12 play, not great. They've had some tough ones that they've lost. The Kansas game jumps out, but they've had other games in league play. They probably could look back and think, man, we should have got those. Trey Mitchell, Eric Stevenson, Mitchell, like there's guys that are on that roster that are very good players that they put together and give the coaching staff and Coach Huggins a lot of credit. They put together a really good team. I like West Virginia in this game. I think they're deserving of the NCAA tournament conversation. It depends on how other teams fare in other leagues but when you have that Big 12, attached to that jersey, that's a good thing, especially when you're trying to make your way into the tournament. And a lot of people think, West Virginia should be able to be in the tournament, but it would help them to win this game. They need to take care of business. Texas Tech's lost three in a row. And I think there's just so much going on around with that program. Although I think Texas Tech has played better in February, I'll give the edge to West Virginia in this game. I think they win this game.
All right, what about Bedlam, the 7-10 matchup? Oklahoma State is the 7, and Oklahoma is the 10 seed.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give Oklahoma the upset here. I think when I look at Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and seeing these teams, I think when Oklahoma's right, and I know it's, I'm sure Sooner fans are thinking, well, yeah, when we're right, they beat Alabama almost by 30. So clearly they're a team that you don't want to overlook, but they've just had some games where they've been inconsistent. They're another team that's had some tough losses. They lost to Texas by 2, back in mid-February, a game that they probably should have had. There's games up and down their schedule where you're thinking, man, they just would have closed that one out. They'd be okay. But I look at Oklahoma with Jalen Hill and Milos Suzan, the freshman, Tanner Groves. But Grant Sherfield is, to me, very much an underrated guard that when he's got it going and he's scoring it at the level he's capable of, it's tough in league play because you're being scouted by everybody. And it's one of those things where I think teams really do a great job on Grant in terms of taking away driving angles and shots that he usually gets. They can frustrate him, but I like Oklahoma and just the talent level. They play as a team when they're right. Oklahoma State's very athletic. They have great size. But I still think, Bryce Thompson can be very up and down. Caleb Boone is one of their better bigs. They have some pieces, but I like Oklahoma to pull this upset. I think this is a game Oklahoma can win. I think it would help them because I think they're playing, with everything on the line. It's survive and advance mode right now for Oklahoma. So we'll see. I think this game could go either way, and obviously I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State won it, but I like the Sooners, and I just feel like in a game like this, usually teams come to the conference tournament when they have a lot to play for and they need a win. Usually your best players step up to the plate, and that's Grant Sherfield. He's got to be great in this game.
Okay, so let's move on to the quarterfinals on Thursday. Number 4 Baylor and number 5 Iowa State. And that was one of the most surprising results from this past weekend. Iowa State had really been struggling, and they went to Baylor and won by double digits. And so the reward for that is now they got to turn right around and do it again on Thursday in Kansas City. And Baylor, they would have been on the bottom half of the bracket, and they could have avoided Kansas until the championship game. Now, if they win this game against Iowa State, they'll probably have to play Kansas. And so what about this quick turnaround rematch from Iowa State's somewhat shocking double-digit victory in Waco?
Yeah, it was an impressive win. It looked like the Iowa State team that we've grown accustomed to seeing with TJ Otzelberger. I thought their defense against Baylor was great. And obviously Baylor's defense has struggled, particularly through the month of February. We saw that in the Kansas State games. Those were 2 huge games for Baylor at the time, and their defense really let them down, particularly in the second half. And Iowa State, they're a team that their wins are predicated on their defense setting the tone. They are a team that I think a little bit through the month of late January into early February, their defense, just had some uncharacteristic games where they just weren't that great on defense. Jaron Holmes was good, very good in the Baylor game. I think he had like 16, 7, and 5. It's a great stat line. Gabe Kalsher is a spot shooter that is one of the better defenders in the league and one of the better defenders in the country. And I think those guys really set the tone in that win against Baylor. Adam Flagler was great. They need more from Keontae George if you're Baylor. Jalen Bridges, LJ Cryer. You look at the Baylor guard play and just the wing play that Jalen brings. And, I know the bigs in terms of Flo Thamba and Chachua, the Baylor bigs haven't been able to give enough to, you look back on Baylor teams, especially the national championship team, like so much is made of this team with the 3 guards. And you're thinking, yeah, but Baylor had some bigs that were very, very impactful on that national championship team, Mark Vital for one. So you look at the Baylor team and you think, man, if Keontae George doesn't shoot it well, so much is on Adam Flagler and LJ Cryer. And those are small, undersized guards that I thought Iowa State did a great job of just taking away so many things that make Baylor what they are and leads to 58 points for Baylor. Usually you're seeing Baylor, north of that on a consistent basis. Iowa State's defense was great. And then Iowa State offensively shot the ball really well and got up to 73 points. So it's a fun rematch game. But we'll see. I think it's still more of the same. Does Iowa State's defense have that level of impact on Baylor again? Or does Keontae George play like the freshman of the year? And does he go off? Because Keontae is fully capable of taking over a game with his shot making and his shot creation. And you got to find, that level of consistency, especially right now. So much is on Keontae to be the player we know he can be. And I just thought Keontae really struggled in that Iowa State game. They need him in order to have a chance to beat Iowa State.
So who you got? Who's advancing, Iowa State or Baylor?
I am going to go with Baylor on this one.
Okay.
I'm going to let them I think they get by.
Okay, so Baylor would then move on to take on the winner of the Kansas game. We both picked West Virginia over Texas Tech, but it could be either team. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it is West Virginia. We saw them play a very close game with a chance to win at Allen Fieldhouse. Didn't get it done. But do you think they have what it takes to be able to upset a KU team on Thursday of the Big 12 tournament? Or do you think that Kansas will take care of business and move on to face Baylor?
I think when you look at once we get to this level of the tournament, Stephen, I think any upset. I don't even want to call it an upset. I obviously if it's West Virginia beating Kansas, it is an upset. But as we've seen with the
there'd
league,
be a lot of people upset. Let me tell you that.
There'd be a lot of people upset. I've seen some Kansas fans very upset walking out of T-Mobile in KC after a first round loss and on a game that they should win. So I won't say it's not feasible to happen. But look, West Virginia, Eric Stevenson, Mitchell, Matthews, Toussaint, they're a team that when they can spread the floor, get some dribble drive attacks, make shots. Trey Mitchell being a factor, who's more of a modern day mobile big that can play the 5. Matthews is the 4 that's more of a small ball 4. They're really good. And defensively, and their toughness level is always going to be high. We know that with West Virginia teams. They cannot turn the ball over. That's the biggest thing. They beat Kansas if they don't turn the ball over. They just had horrible execution. Yes, late in that game, but the turnovers were a problem. And they were right there. And I thought 50-50 balls were a huge part of the Kansas game for West Virginia. I felt like they were on those, and especially now in Fieldhouse, they were getting to those 50-50 balls a lot. I love this matchup just because, Bill Self and Coach Huggins have a great relationship. They're two of the toughest coaches in college basketball. And their programs and their players play that way. So I like this matchup. I'll give Kansas the edge. But I would not be shocked if West Virginia does pull the upset. But it all comes down to them making shots, not turning the ball over, and then obviously cutting off Jalen Wilson if they can, taking away, his 3-point shooting, keeping him off the glass, trying to make him a non-factor, and then obviously you got to match up with Grady Dick, and who's going to do that in terms of the matchups defensively? Is it Emmett Matthews? Is it Johnson? Who's going to take off Grady Dick and run him off the line and not give him clean looks? Because West Virginia can't allow Grady Dick to go off in a game like this. And then DeJuan Harris runs everything for Kansas. You got to maintain the ball. It's a big game for Joe Toussaint, who I thought was pretty good against DeJuan in the first matchup. But so much of this game and really a lot of these games comes down to personnel matchups. And if you're going to be able to play and compete at the same level you were able to just a few weeks ago in Allen Fieldhouse.
If you could play one season for one coach, who would you pick, Huggins or Self?
Oh, man, that's tough. I mean, it's going to be Coach Self for me. But, man, that's a good question. Huggins would be up there. If only I would just like to, just be at a practice of Will Huggins. Just maybe in October, like fall practice when I know, it's like a training camp practice where there's still maybe a week or two before games start up. I would just love to be in that practice to see what it's like. Coach Self, though, if it's 1 year, I would love to play for Coach Self just to number one, absorb his coaching philosophies and how he motivates. I've always heard these stories of him in the locker room, different ways he motivates, different ways he lights guys up in the right ways. That to me is, and I've been listening to Mitch Lightfoot. He's got a podcast. I was listening to some of the things that, he would say about timeouts with Coach Self, and just felt like he always had the right thing to say. They'd be down 8 with like 35, 40 seconds, and everybody thought they could come back. I mean, it was just sort of that motivational factor and just the confidence level that he instills in guys. I would probably lean to Coach Self. All
right, moving on to the next game. Texas coming off their impressive victory over Kansas. They're the 2 seed. Oklahoma, whether it's Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, do you think either of those teams will give Texas any trouble, or do you think Texas could be coming together at the right time? I know they had lost 2 road games, but beating Kansas by 16 points, I'm sure, goes a long way to building their confidence and getting them ready for the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm glad you said that, just because I do think anytime you get a win, particularly the last regular season home game against Kansas, the team that won the league outright, and you had every chance to split or have a share and you didn't get it done, to come back in your own building and beat Kansas the way they did is a great sign for Texas. I think you look at Marcus Carr and the way he's playing, 16 point per game score, really, really good shooter. Rice is the 6th man of the year in the Big 12. Timmy Allen, Tyrese Hunter. They're a team that's got so much talent up and down. And we're not even talking about the Dylan Mitchell freshman, who's the most versatile, defensive big that can guard everywhere on the floor. Texas has got the roster you want because there's veteran experience they have in Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, Rice is the transfer. You know, they put together the roster, and obviously everything that's taken place with Chris Beard, and knowing that that's finally come to a resolution, I think has given, you know, Texas the opportunity to move forward. And I don't think that's looming as much as it probably was, you know, a month ago. And obviously there's still things there, but Rodney Terry's done a great job, and he deserves that. You know, a guy that has been an assistant and came right in and has really done a terrific job. With Texas could have gone south. They could have, you know, really not folded the tents, but, you know, they could have had that something where those teams, you know, struggle with when they lose a head coach like that, where they don't bounce back and they don't play to the caliber they're capable of, and they underachieve. Texas didn't do that. They stayed the course. They won 12 league games. You know, they're coming off a win. I think they're right in the mix here for this Big 12 championship in terms of the tournament in Kansas City. I think Texas should be in the conversation of winning this, and I think that should be their goal to help themselves, obviously, with the NCAA tournament and seeding. Texas, when they're good, they're very good, and it starts with Marcus Carr, but it also is, you know, Tyrese Hunter and Mitchell and Timmy Allen. Everybody's got to kind of play their role and play their part to really carry Texas over the finish line in this tournament.
All right, then the late game on Thursday, and man, you can make an argument that this is the best game on Thursday, but I mean, you could damn near make an argument for every game. But we get Kansas State, the 3 seed, and the 6 seed TCU. Feels like they're a disappointing 6 seed, but they're very talented, and their A game could beat anyone. And so, what do you think about the late game on Thursday, Kansas State and TCU?
Yeah. So these teams split in Big 12 play, and I think when you look at, you know, Kansas State and TCU, I'm with you. This is probably the matchup I'm looking forward to most as well, just because I think TCU is a really dangerous team, and they've been up and down, inconsistent at times in league play. I saw TCU beat Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse, and they looked like a team that nobody could beat. It was with not just Mike Miles, but Emmanuel Miller and Damian Ball and Lampkin. And I know Lampkin's been in and out of the lineup with injuries, but, you know, it's a very good matchup. K-State is playing great basketball to close the year too. Give them a ton of credit in it. They have the coach of the year in the league, and Jerome Tang, and Keontae Johnson, I think, is the not just the best transfer in the Big 12. I think he's the best transfer in college basketball. I think he should win that award because he's been so good and so consistent all year. Marquise Noel, man, just the job he's done all year in league play, and he's finally getting back. He went through a little bit of a lull where there was some games maybe where he didn't play at the caliber he's capable of. He's playing so much better for this team, and I like Kansas State in this tournament too, because I think they could, similar to what we said about Baylor, you know, and Texas. Like, Texas had every chance to get a share of the Big 12 championship with Kansas. K-State was right there, you know, knocking on the door as well. Desi Sills has been so good for K-State. I think Cam Carter is another great role player for them. David Nagesson, who was banged up through injury, but the bigs for K-State, you know, it's not just Keontae and Marquise, and I think nationally those two guys get a lot of recognition. But I think this is what has made K-State so good, and why Jerome Tang is the coach of the year, is the roster. You know, Naquan Tomlin, who's 6'10", and man, Naquan just changes the game when he's aggressive, and his defensive ability speaks for itself. But he's so long, he can make shots, he can play above the rim. And then David Nagesson is a small ball 5. That is your modern day mobile 5-man who can guard on the perimeter, pick and roll. He knows his role, he knows his job, and he excels in that, and he's finally healthy. So K-State's dangerous, and I think they got every chance, just like Texas, to win this Big 12 tournament. And this matchup against TCU, don't sleep on TCU either to win this tournament, because, like I said, when they're right, when they're at full strength, Damian Ball is such a great passer for point guard. He's gotten so much better since I saw him when he was at Memphis as a freshman. TCU is very sneaky, and they're a team that shouldn't be overlooked in this tournament as well. This is what makes the Big 12 so great, and this is why they have been the best league in college basketball. All these teams, I can't wait to see them in March in the NCAA tournament, to see where these teams end up. Are they Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4? Because we could see multiple Big 12 teams down the road when we start getting to the end of the road in that NCAA tournament.
See, and you're right. That's why this tournament, the Big 12 tournament, is so great because you could make a real case for any one of the top 6 seeds to win this tournament. It
No
wouldn't be
question.
a big surprise. Like you said, TCU blew out KU at KU. They could beat anyone on the right day. They're talented enough to win this whole damn thing. Kansas, they're going to be the favorites for sure. But then you look at Texas and Kansas State, and like we talk about that awesome matchup between Iowa State and Baylor. I think we both would lean towards Kansas because they'll have the home court advantage. They're so good at T-Mobile Center, and they're one of the best teams in the nation. But if I told you you can't pick Kansas, you can only pick one other team to win the Big 12 tournament, who would you pick?
I'm going to pick K-State. I think,
look at hey, they've never won this thing before.
They've never won this thing before. I think that's why I'm going to give it to them. This year's been special for them. They've been great. I think they got knocked down a couple times. When they went through a little bit of a stretch where they were struggling, they bounced back. And I think they're playing great basketball right now. And I think they've got their confidence back. I think they've got that mojo back. Marquise Noel is playing back to the caliber he's capable of playing at. I'll give it to K-State. I think Texas would, it's tough to overlook Texas. But again, I just feel like Texas has these games where I look at K-State, Keontae Johnson's toughness and IQ. He's been so good down the stretch here. And I thought there'd be fatigue that would set in. There's not been. He's been playing at a high level. And he's been playing to win, win games. And I think he knows he's got to be the guy for K-State, and everybody else follows suit. I'll give it to K-State. Obviously, they got to win some big games in order to do that, but they're capable of it. Hopefully, their fans and hopefully T-Mobile is packed in purple, just because this team deserves it. I think they want to win. Just the fact of knowing they were in the driver's seat in the Big 12 for a long time and kind of got knocked down. They had a big win against Kansas at home, and you thought, man, they got a chance to win the Big 12, and then they went into that little funk they had and didn't get back on top of the horse. But here they are in Kansas City. I'll give them the edge. I think they're a team that could absolutely win this. But they'd have to get through some tough teams in order to do so, and that starts with TCU.
Just imagine if it's a Kansas State final.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, as good as those. And Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News told us on my show that he thinks if K-State can do that and win the tournament, they could be a 2 seed. So then you can talk about KU being a 1 seed and K-State being a 2 seed. That would be wild. Hey, you know what? And if there's a better Big 12 tournament and SEC tournament preview than what Jared Sutton just gave you, you have to show me where it is. I don't know about it, but I know that Charlie Hustle knows about it. That's why they're the sponsor. Charlie Hustle, when you're going down to the Big 12 tournament, the SEC tournament, you better stop at Charlie Hustle to get geared up, right?
That's right. Got to get your swag. Got to get the swag right. I will be hitting Charlie Hustle as well this week, trying to get some gear. I gotta stock up. It feels like they're coming out with the new vintage swag all the time. You got to get your hands on some college collectible items there. That's on the list of items for me to do once I get back to KC. But I know you're hitting that up too, Steven. I know you're.
I gotta go. I haven't gone yet. I've been waiting on you. We gotta go down there and take care of business.
Hey, Steven, though, how about you've been covering college basketball in Kansas City for so many years, and obviously when I was at Mizzou, there was some great games between Missouri and Kansas and K-State. I think these 3 local schools, where they might end up in the tournament, this is one of the best years we've had in Kansas City in terms of the local schools. Creighton's going to be in this tournament, in the NCAA tournament as well. How much fun has this been just to cover these teams this year? Just because college basketball, two new head coaches too, and Jerome Tang and Dennis Gates, and both of them are going to be in the conversation for National Coach of the Year.
They're all going to the NCAA tournament, and they all have expectations of from their fan bases of actually doing something in the NCAA tournament. So it is very, very exciting to talk about all 3 schools and their fan bases engaged and ready for March Madness. Almost as exciting as next week will be when we do a podcast previewing the NCAA tournament and all the matchups these schools get. So after Selection Sunday and after the dust settles, maybe like on Monday and Tuesday, we can churn out an NCAA tournament bracket special. And how much would you like to break down a Missouri first-round tournament game, huh?
I can't
Yeah.
wait. And
Yeah,
it better
look
be
at the
off the
smile on your
8-9
face.
line. It better be off that 8-9 line. That's all I'm saying.
Lenardi, you better quit doing that. Lenardi's putting them on the 8-9 and trying to get them to match up against Kansas in the second round of the 1 seed. Stop it, Joey Brackets. You're clickbait. I know what you're doing.
Let
We're
it
not gonna
go.
fall for it.
Yep, let it go, Lenardi. Let it go. That's right.
Jerry Palm had Missouri as a 5 or a 6. I like the way he goes about his business. I'm done with Joey Brackets.
Yeah,
all right, Jared Sutton.
I'm ready. All right, hey, Steven, thank you.
We'll see you in Kansas City. What are you going to be there for the championship game?
I think so. I got to get back and be around it. Let me just say this. I've been out in Vegas. I cover Pac-12. I've done this for the last few years. I like going to the Big East tournament. I've done that before. Big Ten is a lot of fun. Nothing like the Big 12. It is the best conference tournament, and it's right in Kansas City, Missouri. Get your Charlie Hustle swag. Get down to Power and Light. Get the pregame festivities in and see some college basketball, especially, hey, this tournament's going to be a blast in KC.
Hey, you pregame, but pace yourself.
That's
especially
right.
on Thursday. People get down there real anxious at 10 a.m., and maybe your team's not playing until 6 or 8:30. You got to take baby steps, man. Longevity is what we're looking for at the Big 12 tournament. That's Jared Sutton. I'm Steven St. John. Thank you to Charlie Hustle. And this has been the House of Hustle. Until next week, go get mad in some March. Enjoy the great basketball. Enjoy March Madness. Enjoy the Big 12 tournament. And we'll be back at you next week to talk about the NCAA tournament. Until then, let's have a great celebration of basketball in Kansas City. We'll be back at you next week.